Mobile, Alabama, in the mid-19th century, was a thriving port city perched at the mouth of the Alabama River, a glittering hub of southern commerce. Cotton bales piled high on the docks, bound for distant ports in Liverpool and New York, while the air hummed with the clamor of merchants haggling over prices and lawyers rushing between courthouses. The city's population had ballooned past 15,000, nearly half of them enslaved individuals who toiled in the shadows of opulent townhouses lining Government Street. These grand homes, with their wrought iron balconies and brick sidewalks, exuded wealth and prestige. Yet beneath the veneer of prosperity lurked the ever-present dread of summer's yellow fever, when the humid air turned thick with smoke from burning tar barrels meant to ward off the plague. Among the city's elite residences stood the Duval Mansion on Royal Street, a stately, Greek Revival structure boasting 6 white columns and sprawling gardens that extended to an alley of servants' quarters. Pierre Guillot, a shrewd cotton factor, had amassed his fortune by brokering deals for planters, leveraging his ties to northern buyers. His wife, Marguerite, descended from New Orleans aristocracy, managed the household with military precision. Together, they owned 23 enslaved people, field hands on their plantation 10 miles north, and house servants who maintained the illusion of effortless grandeur in town. It was into this world that Solomon arrived in the winter of 1843, purchased from an estate sale in Charleston. At 31, he was tall and lean, his hands bearing scars from years of carpentry. The bill of sale described him as literate, skilled in medicine and woodworking, with a docile temperament, a descriptor that, in hindsight, should have raised alarms. Solomon's previous owners had granted him rare privileges. A Quaker physician in Charleston had recognized his sharp intellect and taught him to read medical texts. Solomon could diagnose fevers by tongue color and breathing patterns, knew which herbs induced vomiting or halted hearts, and understood how certain plants mimicked symptoms of cholera or consumption. The Quaker had meant this knowledge for healing, but Solomon harbored darker ambitions. In the Duval household, Solomon served as a general servant, maintaining the home, running errands, and occasionally providing basic medical care when Mobile's overpriced and often inebriated doctors were unavailable. Pierre considered himself enlightened for allowing Solomon access to his library, oblivious to the man's nocturnal studies of anatomy tomes and botanical encyclopedias. At night, Solomon shared cramped quarters with 7 other enslaved individuals: Marcus, the carriage driver; Rachel, the cook; Eliza and Hannah, the cleaners; and 3 young men handling garden and heavy labor. They noticed Solomon's reading habits, his solitary city errands, and his unnerving gaze. But survival in bondage meant avoiding questions. Minding one's business was a creed etched into their existence. Mobile's commercial aristocracy formed a tight-knit web, with families like the Dials intersecting the Chamberlains. Thomas owned timber mills. His wife Abigail collected French porcelain, and the apprentices, who controlled cotton warehouses on Water Street. Robert Apprentice was notorious for his gambling and brutality towards slaves. His widowed sister, Catherine, endured his mockery and dependence. These clans mingled at St. Francis Street Methodist Church on Sundays, cotillions during social seasons, and business gatherings where fortunes hinged on cotton prices. Their enslaved servants navigated this network, delivering messages and attending functions, creating invisible threads of observation that Solomon mapped with scholarly precision. Over 4 years, Solomon did more than serve. He studied. He cataloged schedules, routines, and vulnerabilities: who drank excessively, who had frail hearts, who dreaded illness. He noted domestic strife, cold marriages, hidden secrets that could unravel reputations. On errands through Mobile's streets and gardens, he gathered plants: white snakeroot from river shades, pokeweed roots, death camas bulbs, oleander leaves from ornamental beds. He understood foxglove's toll on strained hearts, aconite's stroke-like effects, arsenic's mimicry of contaminated water. The wealthy never secured their medicine cabinets against trusted house servants. The other enslaved noticed Solomon's herb drying, but assumed remedies for ailments that might spare them blame or reduce doctor bills. Rachel once remarked on his collection, but Solomon's smile and explanation, studying to help with doctoring, sufficed. By spring 1847, Solomon was prepared, armed with knowledge, access, and targets chosen not randomly, but for seeming naturalness. He selected those whose habits invited suspicion of fate, whose deaths might shift power dynamics, creating subtle opportunities in a system that offered none. April 1847 brought unseasonable heat. The air swollen with moisture and nocturnal frog choruses disrupting sleep. Solomon's duties continued with quiet efficiency, but his observations sharpened. He noted dinner habits, who ate what, drank from which glass, complained of aches. The first death struck on April 23rd. Thomas Chamberlain collapsed in his study post-dinner, clutching his chest. Abigail found him blue-lipped. Dr. Edmund Wickham arrived too late, diagnosing heart failure in the 53-year-old gourmand and smoker. Unremarkable, except for an incident 3 days prior. Solomon had delivered a timber message to the Chamberlains, waiting at the servants' entrance as Thomas passed, red-faced and breathless from stairs. To the cook, Mary, Solomon murmured, "That's a dying man. His heart won't last the week." Mary laughed it off, citing Thomas's ox-like strength. Solomon persisted 3 days, maybe 4. Fingers swollen, neck pulsing, it's working too hard. When Thomas died exactly 3 days later, Mary's spine chilled. She mentioned it to Abigail, who dismissed it as coincidence. Everyone knew his weak heart. But the prediction lingered like a splinter. 6 weeks later, in June's stifling heat amid yellow fever preparations, Catherine Apprentice fell ill. Cramps, vomiting, delirium. Dr. Wickham suspected cholera, prescribing laudanum. She died dehydrated, gray-skinned, certificate noting gastric distress. Again, Solomon had foretold it 2 weeks earlier, witnessing Robert berate Catherine at their home during a document delivery. Back at the vase, he told Eliza, Catherine Apprentice won't live through summer. Sadness eating her inside, and her brother starves her. Weak body catches everything. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Eliza recalled it uneasily when Catherine perished. The pattern emerged through summer and fall. In July, Clerk William Foster drowned drunk off a dock. Solomon had warned Marcus a week prior. Drinks that much near water won't last long. August saw elderly Mrs. Talbert die in sleep, natural at 76. Solomon predicted to Rachel, heart tired, goes quiet before September. By autumn, 5 deaths matched Solomon's eerily accurate forecasts. Whispers stirred among those enslaved, his gaze unnerved, but voicing fears invited peril. October accelerated the toll. Pierre's partner, Henry Loran, succumbed to influenza at 48. Solomon predicted to Pierre, Loran looks poorly settle affairs soon. Solomon visited Loran's home 4 times pre-death. Preparing coffee, Jacob later recalled as bitterly tasted blamed on beans. Then the Whitfields' delicate 7-year-old Sarah, Solomon, casually told Marguerite, won't see spring-long weakness. She died of pneumonia in January 1848. Horrifying Marguerite, who recalled the words like ice. By February, Robert Apprentice collapsed in an alley post-gambling rage. Ruled a stroke at 42. Solomon foretold to Marcus, pushes luck too far, brain pops like overripe fruit. Marcus noted, Solomon's almond-scented hands after a warehouse visit the prior night reminiscent of poisoned tailies. Suspicions divided the enslaved. Some deemed Solomon gifted with sight. Others sensed something sinister. Marcus confided in Rachel. He doesn't see the future, he makes it. Yet, evidence lacked. Accusing meant risking their lives in a system valuing their words as nothing. Dr. Wickham, certifying 5 deaths, noticed connections to the Devos. Abigail's casual mention of Solomon's prediction on Thomas sparked his magpie mind. Reviewing cases, querying socially, he pinpointed Solomon. Lacking proof, fearing reputational ruin, Wickham observed discreetly at functions. Noting Solomon's blending in yet mutual awareness, Solomon's amused glances. The ninth death, Judge Marcus Finley, 61, chest pains to heart disease. Solomon predicted to Pierre, won't see daughter's June wedding. Pierre confronted Solomon. How? Solomon, I observe signs trained in medicine. His quiet confidence unsettled Pierre, who confided in Wickham. Comparing notes, 9 deaths, 9 hits. Not impossible if he's causing them, Wickham said. They vowed proof, unaware Solomon anticipated, plotting boldly. Spring 1848 tents the household. Marguerite eyed Solomon serving. Pierre locked cabinets. Enslaved felt the storm. Rachel urged stop. Marcus accused. Solomon admitted calmly, you don't understand watching owners act like gods destroying lives. He justified. They gave knowledge, access used for my purpose. Targets worsened the world. Terrified, they knew confrontation risked everything. The tension in the Vow household thickened like the humid air before a summer storm, enveloping everyone in a shroud of unspoken dread. By late spring 1848, Solomon's presence had transformed from unremarkable to ominous. Marguerite Vow could no longer bear to watch him serve meals. Her eyes darted to his hands, wondering if they had brushed against something lethal in the kitchen. Pierre, ever the pragmatic businessman, began locking not just the medicine cabinet, but also the wine cellar and pantry. Inventorying contents nightly as if tallying cotton bales. Dr. Edmund Wickham's visits increased. Ostensibly for social calls, but his notebook bulged with observations. Solomon's fluid movements at gatherings. The way he poured drinks without spilling a drop. His uncanny ability to anticipate needs before they were voiced. Among the enslaved, the pressure was suffocating. They shared quarters where whispers carried like smoke, and the knowledge of Solomon's deeds hung heavy. Rachel, the cook, broke the fragile silence one sweltering evening as Solomon ground herbs in his mortar and pestle. The rhythmic scrape echoing in the dim room. Solomon, they're watching you, she said, her voice low but urgent. Whatever you've been doing, you need to stop before it brings ruin on us all. He didn't pause, his eyes fixed on the powder forming under the pestle. I don't know what you mean, he replied evenly. Marcus stepped from the doorway, his frame silhouetted against the fading light, anger sharpening his features. Yes, you do. We all know. Maybe we don't say it outright, but those people you predicted dying, they didn't just die. You helped them along, didn't you? The room fell silent, the scrape halting as Solomon met Marcus's gaze. For an interminable moment, no one breathed. Then Solomon spoke, his tone measured, almost professorial. You think you know, but you don't understand. You haven't felt the weight of watching these people act like gods, destroying lives on whims, growing fat while we starve. Preaching mercy in church, then coming home to whip someone for a broken plate. Rachel's hand trembled on her spoon. So you killed them? You just decided who deserved to die. Solomon set down the pestle, his expression unyielding. I decided that if I'm to be property, serving their food, washing their clothes, hearing their secrets, I might as well be useful in my own way. Everyone I helped along made the world worse by breathing. Thomas Chamberlain worked slaves to death and laughed. Catherine Apprentice endured abuse no one stopped. Robert Apprentice beat 3 to death without consequence. Judge Finley hanged the poor while freeing the rich. They weren't innocents. Marcus's voice wavered, conviction cracking under the weight of shared resentment. That's not your choice to make. Yet, deep down, every soul in that room had harbored similar fantasies, visions of oppressors felled by fate or force. Solomon had merely enacted them. It's not about choice, Solomon countered. It's about possibility. They gave me knowledge, access, trust, taught me medicine to heal them, never dreaming I'd turn it elsewhere. That was their mistake. Eliza, quiet until now, whispered, and now? What happens now that they suspect? Solomon's smile chilled them, not cruel, but amused, as if savoring a private joke. Now? I give them exactly what they expect. 2 weeks later, the 10th death shattered the fragile equilibrium. Dr. Edmund Wickham awoke on a Tuesday morning in early June with dizziness, spiraling into nausea, so violent he collapsed beside his bed. By Wednesday, he was confined to his chambers, racked by vomiting, diarrhea, fever, and debilitating weakness symptoms mirroring severe food poisoning. His wife summoned a colleague from Montgomery, but Wickham's kidneys failed rapidly. On Friday afternoon, as delirium claimed him, he gasped to the physician, "Check Solomon, the Davao slave ... poisoner." The words emerged slurred, dismissed as the ravings of a dying man. The official diagnosis? Acute renal failure, possibly arsenic related, but without evidence of source. What damned Solomon was the prescience. 3 weeks prior, he'd remarked casually to Marguerite while serving tea, "Dr. Wickham looks poorly lately. All that drinking takes a toll. Wouldn't surprise me if his kidneys give out before summer." When news of Wickham's exact demise, panic surged through Mobile's elite like a fever. Pierre Diel stormed to Sheriff James Cartwright's office that day, laying out the pattern. 10 deaths, 10 predictions, all linked to Solomon. Cartwright, a pragmatic lawman with a weathered face from years patrolling docks, listened with mounting unease. "You're saying you're murdered 10 over a year, and you're only now reporting?" Val's desperation cracked. "We didn't know. They seem natural. It's the pattern that reveals it." Cartwright drummed fingers on his desk. "Pattern isn't proof. We need witnesses. Poison in his possession, something concrete. Otherwise, it's coincidence." Dow and Sal, Wickham was investigating when he died. Convenient, no? The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Worst luck or boldest killer I've heard. They'd planned a search of Solomon's quarters that evening. As sunset bled orange over the bay, Cartwright, Viel, and 2 deputies descended on the alley behind the mansion. Solomon sat on his bed, fully dressed, as if awaiting guests. No resistance, no surprise, just calm acceptance as they bound his wrists. The search unearthed horrors from under floorboards. Jars of dried plants, aconite, white snake root, death camas, oleander, powdered packets wrapped meticulously, a small ledger in precise script, far too educated for assumptions about slaves. The ledger chronicled not 1 year, but 4, from Solomon's arrival. Early pages, observations. TC complains of chest pain, drinks heavily, stares leave him breathless. Sia malnourished, brother treats cruelly, prone to stomach ailments. Our drinks, violent temper, walks alone at night. Midsections, plans. TC, foxglove extract and evening whiskey, small doses over weeks, mimics heart failure. CA, white snake root and milk symptoms like cholera. RA, aconite and wine rapid. Stroke like. Final pages chilled deepest, predictions predating deaths. Blanks filled post factum matching records. The last, E arsenic compound, gradual over 2 weeks kidney failure, week of June 10th. Final obstacle removed. Below, PD pending. MD pending. Val whispered, recognizing Pierre and Marguerite. We were next. Solomon, watching from the corner, smiled faintly. "He was planning to kill us," Viel stammered. Cartwright demanded, "Where's the poison for the vase?" Solomon's reply, "Already in the house. You'll never find it." For 3 days, they ransacked the mansion, kitchen stores, cabinets, cellars, sugar bowls, every surface Solomon touched. Nothing, bluff or ingenuity. Viel refused home-cooked meals for weeks, subsisting on hotel fare. Marguerite's anxiety spiraled, seeing threats in every sip. Guards posted, tasters hired, yet dread persisted like an invisible toxin waiting to strike. Solomon's trial commenced June 30th, 80th. In the courthouse, Judge Finley once ruled. Crowds packed galleries, bereaved families, morbid spectators, enslaved observers with masked expressions. Prosecution hinged on ledger, poisons, and testimonies. Rachel described herb collections. Marcus, the almond scent post-apprentice visit. Eliza, the prediction's accuracy. Jacob, Lauron's servant, recounted bitter coffee prepared by Solomon. Defense attorney Philip Hastings argued circumstantiality, plans for remedies, predictions from medical acumen, ledger as notes, not plans. No witnesses to administration, no direct links. On day 3, Solomon testified a rarity, pushed by prosecutor Wallace Breckenridge for confession. Did you write this? Breckenridge thrust the ledger. Yes. These entries see kung foxglove. See snake root. What mean? Solomon faced the jury, voice articulate, shocking the room. Exactly what you think. I studied weaknesses, used knowledge to remove them. Uproar. Hastings objected futilely. Solomon continued. Chamberlain killed slaves laughing. Apprentice abused his sister. Robert beat 3, dead unpunished. Finley corrupt. Wickham too close. And others? Breckenridge pressed. Foster witnessed me near warehouse. Talbert observant. Questioned herbs. The Whitfield girl. Regret flickered. Miscalculation dosage for her father. Debtor fleeing go. I regret that. Courtroom chaos. Shouts. Amelia Whitfield's restrained screams. Order restored. Breckenridge demanded. Why? Solomon. Because I could. You gave knowledge. Never thought I'd turn it. Trusted me with food, medicine, secrets underestimated. Invisible like furniture, you confess sins before me. That's power. Revenge? No practical. Selected for benefit, threat removal, world improvement. Would have continued sans Wickham. En vase. Does it matter? Fears as effective, wondering every meal if it's the one. Jury deliberated under an hour. Guilty. Sentenced to hang July 28th. The execution drew 300. Relief tinged with dread. Solomon ascended unresisting, refusing rights. Final words. You built a system treating people as property surprised when property fights. Others like me will come. Can't own mines. Drop clean. Neck snapped. But his satisfied expression haunted post-execution paranoid grouped elites. Voss sold home, fled Virginia health, declining mysteriously. Enslaved emotions mixed. Monster or power symbol. Story whispered, encoded. Autopsies inconclusive. Uncertainty, Solomon's revenge. Every death suspect. Ledger studied. Challenging slave stereotypes. Physicians like Robert Marsh published on poisons, advancing toxicology. Historians note victims' cruelties confirmed. Possible higher count. Peer died 1856. Undiagnosed poison-like. Marguerite 1872, plagued ailments. Courthouse now museum, ledger displayed unsettling. Precision. Solomon's tale. Caution on education, oppression's consequences, or psychopath's intellect. Horror and ease, exploiting blind spots. Weaponizing trust. Asterisk. The echo of Solomon's execution rippled through Mobile like the aftershocks of a distant quake, unsettling foundations that had long been taken for granted. On that sweltering July 28, 1848, as the trapdoor swung open and Solomon's body dropped with a finality that should have brought closure. The crowd of nearly 300 dispersed in a haze of muted conversations. The mood was peculiar, not triumphant, as one might expect after the hanging of a confessed killer, but laced with persistent unease. Relief mingled with dread, as if the rope around Solomon's neck had failed to sever the invisible threads of fear he'd woven into the fabric of their lives. Witnesses would later debate his final words, parsing them for prophecy or defiant. You built a system that treats people as property, and you're surprised when property fights back? You'll have others like me. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but they'll come because you can't own people's minds. No matter how many chains you use, you can only pretend you do until one of us proves otherwise. For Pierre and Marguerite Dow, the execution offered no solace. They returned to their mansion on Royal Street that evening, the grand columns casting long shadows in the fading light, but the home felt tainted, as if Solomon's presence lingered in every corner. Pierre's hands trembled as he poured brandy from a sealed bottle he he'd purchased that day, refusing anything from their own stores. Marguerite paced the parlor, her eyes darting to the servants' quarters visible through the window. "It's over," Pierre muttered, more to convince himself than her. "He's gone." But Marguerite shook her head, her voice a whisper. "Is it?" He said the poison was already here. What if every meal, every drink? They hired food tasters the next morning, two young enslaved boys from a neighboring household, and posted armed guards at the kitchen doors. For weeks, they lived on provisions sourced externally, their paranoia transforming the once elegant home into a fortress of suspicion. The enslaved community in Mobile processed Solomon's death with a complexity born of their precarious existence. In the hidden gatherings at communal wells or midnight whispers in quarters across the city, his story spread like folklore, encoded in veiled language to evade overseers' ears. To some, like the seamstresses and field hands who had suffered under the very men Solomon targeted, he was no monster but a stark symbol of resistance, a man who had turned the tools of oppression against the oppressors. He saw what we all see, one elderly woman murmured at the market, her eyes scanning for white listeners. But he did what we dream. Others, particularly those in the DeVoe household like Rachel and Marcus, viewed him with horror tempered by understanding. His actions had endangered them all. Collective punishment was a constant threat in a system that viewed enslaved people as interchangeable. Yet, they couldn't deny the spark of empowerment in knowing that one of their own had outwitted the elite for so long. Marcus, sold soon after to a plantation upriver, carried the memory like a scar, telling his descendants years later. Solomon wasn't right, but he wasn't all wrong. He showed them we think, we claim we're human. Sheriff James Cartwright, pragmatic to his core, ordered exhumations for 4 of Solomon's victims in the days following the hanging. The autopsies, conducted under the dim light of Mobile's rudimentary morgue, aimed to confirm poisoning and perhaps uncover more victims. But 1848's forensic methods were crude. Arsenic and plant toxins degraded over time, leaving traces too faint for definitive proof. Elevated compounds appeared in 2 bodies, Thomas Chamberlain and Robert. Apprentice, but not enough to rule out natural contamination from well water or food. The inconclusive results became Solomon's posthumous triumph, seeding doubt in every subsequent death. For years, Mobile's upper class eyed natural passings with suspicion. Was that fever truly Yellow Jack, or a delayed dose from Solomon's arsenal? Had he accomplices among the enslaved, continuing his work? The uncertainty festered worse than confirmed guilt, eroding trust in physicians and servants alike. The ledger, that chilling artifact of Solomon's intellect, became an object of morbid fascination. Seized as evidence, it was preserved in the courthouse archives, its yellowed pages displaying a precision that challenged the era's stereotypes of enslaved people as uneducated and simplistic. Scholars and lawyers pored over it in the following months, noting the educated script, the methodical observations, the cold calculus of dosages and timelines. It stood as irrefutable evidence of a brilliant mind constrained by bondage, one that had manipulated Mobile's medical and legal establishments for over a year. Dr. Robert Marsh, Wickham's young successor from Boston, studied the case obsessively. In 1850, he published a paper in this Southern medical journal titled On the Detection of Plant-Based Toxins in Suspicious Deaths, drawing directly from Solomon's methods. The article detailed how foxglove could mimic heart failure, aconite a stroke, and arsenic renal collapse symptoms Wickham had routinely overlooked. Controversial upon release, with accusations that Marsh was arming potential poisoners, it nonetheless advanced toxicology, urging better autopsy protocols and documentation of unusual clusters of deaths. Mobile itself underwent subtle transformations in Solomon's wake. Families among the commercial aristocracy grew wary of granting enslaved people access to kitchens or medicine cabinets, some banning literacy outright for fear it bred cunning like Solomon's. Education is a double-edged sword, Pierre DeVoe wrote in a letter to his New Orleans kin, advocating stricter controls. Others, a minority influenced by Quaker ideals or pragmatic self-preservation, argued for kinder treatment to prevent such resentment from boiling over. Treat them as men, and they won't become wolves, one merchant opined at a gentleman's club. Yet, neither approach confronted the root injustice, the institution of slavery that had forged Solomon's rage. The city's enslaved, meanwhile, navigated heightened scrutiny, more whippings for perceived insolence, tighter curfews, fragmented households as suspicious owners sold troublesome individuals. Rachel was dispatched to a cotton farm in Mississippi, Eliza to a household in Montgomery. Their testimonies during the trial marked them as potential threats. The case resurfaced during Reconstruction, when formerly enslaved individuals began documenting their histories. In the 1870s, elderly witnesses who had known Solomon now freed shared accounts in oral histories collected by Northern scholars. They described a man of frightening intellect, cold demeanor, and unyielding purpose. Most of us feared him more than hated him, one recounted. His killings could have brought the whip on all our backs. Yet they acknowledged the validity of his grievances, even if his methods horrified. These narratives emphasized that Solomon's actions were anomalous, not representative. But they underscored the system's brutality, the daily degradations that could twist a mind toward vengeance, thought modern historians. Revisiting the archives in the 20th and 21st centuries have unearthed disturbing layers. Court records and diaries confirm Solomon's victims were indeed cruel. Chamberlain's plantation logs noted slaves expiring from exhaustion. Apprentices' beatings were notorious, escaping prosecution through bribes. Judge Finley's rulings favored the wealthy, dooming the poor. Solomon's confessed body count of 10 may understate reality. Researchers link him to at least 2 more suspicious deaths in 1847 to 1848, including a banker who drowned under unclear circumstances and a matron who succumbed to gastric fever after Solomon delivered her medicines. The total reaching 12 aligns with the period's whispers, spanning to 1851, or a distant relative died similarly. The most haunting is the fate of Pierre and Marguerite. By 1850, unable to shake the dread, they sold the Royal Street mansion to a Mississippi family ignorant of its history. The new owners reported unease in the kitchens, hiring fresh staff and departing after 5 years. The Vaughs relocated to Virginia, but peace eluded them. Pierre withered from a lingering illness starting in 1854, gradual weakness, organ failure undiagnosable by doctors, mirroring slow-acting poison. He died in 1856 at 58. His final letters paranoid rants about invisible death. Marguerite endured longer, plagued by mysterious ailments, recurring nausea, fatigue, skin pallor. Physicians attributed it to nerves, but she confided to a diary, "Every ache whispers his name." She passed in 1872 at 65, her symptoms consistent with chronic exposure. Whether Solomon truly poisoned them, perhaps in sugar jars or wine casks, or if psychosomatic stress from fear destroyed their health remains debated. The ledger's pending entries suggest intent. But proof evaporated like the toxins themselves. In the end, Solomon's legacy isn't supernatural dread, but human reckoning, the reminder that oppression breeds ingenuity. That knowledge unbound by morality can topple empires from within. Mobile moved on, its docks bustling anew, but the shadow of those 12 deaths lingers, a testament that the most terrifying monsters are those forged by our own cruelties, waiting patiently to turn the tables.